Hello and welcome back to An Unpolished Earthling. Today we'll be talking about our second essay, which is entitled A Dream of a Healthy Future. And this is to continue on from our last episode where we essentially discussed the problem within our global socio-economic paradigm. So, here we go. A Dream of a Healthy Future. Now that we've had a fairly thorough look at the problems we face and an overview of some of the technological tools we have at our disposal, it is time to reframe our crisis as an opportunity. After realizing that our current global socioeconomic system is literally suicidal in that it has us on a direct course to mass extinction and does not allow any possibility of survival, any reasonable person will know and understand that we need a completely new system. It is in imagining what new alternatives we could embrace and use to survive that we begin to see how this nightmarish crisis may actually be the fulcrum we need to transform our world into something truly amazing. Firstly, we must be clear that the solution we present here is merely our own vision of a possible future. Of course, we love the idea and think it's the best idea we've ever heard of, but then again, we also came up with it, so our opinion is certainly a bit biased. Thus, although we feel our solution is sufficient, we know it cannot be the only possibility, and we encourage everyone to imagine new alternatives in the hopes that someone or some group will come up with something even better. With that in mind, allow us to present our own dream of a better world, currently going by the working title of Gaia United. Gaia United is a global communication and resource management system rooted in ecological sustainability. Its purpose is to ensure the survival of humanity whilst preserving the health of our biosphere and the biodiversity of our wilderness, and simultaneously providing the most freedom possible for each individual. In function, it is a global, online, direct, mosaic democracy based on equitable ecological footprints. It's a little complicated, but then again, so is life. How it works is a bit of a headache to say for certainty, for it is intrinsically a changing system, always adapting to the circumstances and desires of the people at any point in time, and thus the details could be different over a few years. This slightly confusing aspect is essential, as it is the nature of any true direct democracy. More specifically, we mean that absolutely any part of our consensus on how our government works, and government in bunny ears because it's not a government like you've ever probably heard of before, in that we're not voting for politicians here, but we'll get to that. It will be eternally up for debate. Perhaps I'll just restate that because I've interrupted there, but every single part of how this new system would work can be debated and adjusted as it goes on. So perhaps the only aspects that are intended to remain perfectly constant are our core values of planetary stewardship and individual equality. Thus, the system should always ensure our survival, as well as our ability to have our voices equally heard and respected. To flesh out the details of how the system works, it is best to begin with a presumption of human consensus. However, this is only for the sake of example and not necessarily what we would all agree on when given the chance. So on the whole, the system is a series of agreements, starting with the most important and globally unifying decisions, and then gradually branching off into more local concerns where any one local consensus does not need to agree with any other local consensus. So for example, it matters to everyone that we all agree to share our planet equally and respect everyone equally. It does not matter, or at least it's reasonable to presume that it ought to not matter, to one community if another community wants to only wear a particular style of clothing or speak a certain language. Thus, there will be many different levels of consensus and diversity. Let us presume then that since nature is awesome and still holds many secrets and lessons for us to discover, that we all agree to leave nearly half the planet to pure wilderness, and limit our collective ecological footprint to 1 global hectare per human being. This leaves 0.7 global hectares per person to wilderness. This means that if we all adhere to our system, we will be truly sustainable until our sun dies, and until then, we will always have a beautiful planet rich in biodiversity. I should put in a caveat here. This essay is a couple of years old, and our biocapacity has changed. It's probably, we probably have a little bit less than that now than when I first wrote this, but by the time you're watching this, it may have improved. Like currently, due to the global pandemic we're going through, humanity's ecological footprint has reduced, so maybe this is still accurate. We will do an update with more recent studies and data to go over all the facts and data that I'm showing you now. We'll do a video with how it is today, as most of this data is from 2011. Continuing on. Next, so just to refresh, if we all agree to take care of our planet, we all want to live, and we all want to share it equally, that would be 1 global hectare per human being, and leave the rest to wilderness. Next, we need to make a 2-part vote based on how we want to allocate our personal ecological budgets, and how we are prepared to compromise when necessary. We call this a preference and priority vote. Today, such a vote would be nearly impossible for people to fill out competently, as the majority of humanity has no idea what it takes to produce anything in our economy in terms of its ecological impact. Thus, to even decide how much of your budget should go towards growing staple foods compared to luxury foods, or how much it takes to build a home or provide clothing and fresh water, it would be a guessing game for most people. However, by combining all of human knowledge into an online database that is then streamlined to provide easy answers to our questions, Gaia United would be able to tell you how much of your footprint needs to go to any particular item. For example, it would show you how much of your budget would need to go to strawberries if you wanted to eat a dozen of them every day of your life. Furthermore, it would show you different options on how to achieve this. For example, growing them outside versus growing them in a greenhouse, growing them yourself versus importing them, or even how where you live in the world will change how hard it is to produce them. At first, this information would likely be overwhelming. But by simply playing with your vote, you would be able to see a 3D virtual representation of what your life, community, and world would look like based on your current choices, and how they would combine with the dreams of everyone else. Thus, you would be able to tweak your future by changing things one piece at a time until you find the dream you want to realize. Your vision may change throughout your life, but always by your choice. It is important to know that your online dream world will not magically appear in reality. Everyone will have to work towards achieving their dreams. However, this would be a world where everyone is allowed to achieve their dreams, so long as their dreams fit within what the planet can support without suffering permanent damage. It would also be a world where everyone has access to the knowledge and step-by-step instructions on how to achieve their dreams, including a global communication system that will connect everyone to the people that they want to cooperate with. Thus, though we will not have our dreams handed to us, we will be empowered with the rights, resources, knowledge, and support to achieve them. To go into more detail, we must next address the compromise aspect, and for that, we must consider the concept of scarcity. So, Jacques Fresco had done a lot of work on resource-based economies and a government system called socio-cyberneering, which is essentially a technocracy. And he has an idea that if we could make an economy that is productive enough, we would eliminate scarcity, and everyone would just have everything that they wanted, and therefore we would be free of money. Now, we believe this is fundamentally impossible, even if we harness all of the resources in our galaxy. The reason for this is that scarcity is about limited availability of resources relative to human desires. In other words, scarcity means that there is not enough for everyone to get everything that they want, and that is why we need systems of regulation, and we usually use money and property rights to do that. Now, and we do that so that we can decide who gets to use what resources. Now, to eliminate scarcity by increasing production to any level, no matter how great that level may be, is to presume that the other side of the equation, human desire, has a limit. We believe, however, that desire is born from the imagination, and thus it has no limit and will never be truly satisfied. More practically, though, desires are not always about a thing, but more often a particular thing. Thus, if everyone in the world wanted to live in Hawaii, but some people wanted to live as nomads in a wilderness on Hawaii, there would simply not be enough space to give everyone a place to live and provide low density and wilderness areas for those who want to live there in seclusion. Compromise must be made, and we believe it will always be a part of any society. A relatively simple way to deal with compromise is to allow people to make their priorities clear and to make these priorities commensurable, which means practically comparable, with everyone else's through the use of percentages. So the way this works with the preferences section is that next to each preference you have about your dream future, which includes not just your ecological footprint allocations, but also any other preferences you might have, such as language, religion, or perhaps even a completely peanut-free community for those with severe allergies. You simply put in a number that represents how important this is to you next to each one of those things. And the larger the number is, the more important it is to you than the smaller the number. Now, once you've finished, the system can turn all of your preferences into percentages of the total. So if someone had 100 different preferences, and the only thing they really cared about was living somewhere on the equator, then they might put just 1 point to nearly every preference, and then 1,000,000 points to living on the equator. In the end, they would have roughly 99.999% priority given to living on the equator and 0.001 to everything else. Once the priorities and preferences from everyone are put together, Gaia United will make a best fit version of everyone's dreams, making compromises only where necessary and according to everyone's priorities. Thus, if everyone in the world wanted to live on the equator, but most did not make that choice a very high priority, then only those who care the most about living there will end up there, but all the people who lost out will find that they did end up getting more other important desires satisfied. And important is subjective, and they're the ones who decided that they were more important, right? So there would be a few extra layers of complexity added to make things more fair. For example, an effort to make sure that the lowest priority satisfaction for everyone in the system is at least the highest level possible that it could reasonably be. Though all of the fine details like that are what we would collectively vote on and agree on. It wouldn't be that the system would automatically make that happen if people didn't want that to. Now, the fact that this process of actually combining everyone's dreams, desires, and priorities together with what the planet can realistically support, and specifically how to achieve that vision, is so complicated, means that it will be a little difficult at first for anyone to predict exactly how their vote would turn out in the virtual collective dream. However, by simply trying it out and exploring the outcome, people can gradually change their inputs until they find a collective compromise that truly reflects their needs, wants, and priorities. Besides, so just to clarify that, so I imagine when we first log onto the system, the first couple of weeks, the 3D vision of the world is going to change dramatically. But after a few weeks or perhaps a month, it's going to settle down until you realize that you can't tweak your vote too much more to make your vision of the future better than what you're getting. Like, it'll just start to come together and coalesce and gain clarity as more people get on, and you reconcile with yourself what your true priorities are. And when those settles down and everyone else settles that down, then you get okay, this is a reasonable and equitable way for us to all come together and create this dream together. Now, besides the basic agreements and the mechanism of turning dreams into a collective vision, Gaia United will also have to achieve consensus on many other important issues, which, although they must be reached, we cannot say what they will be with only our own preferences to draw on. The topics will include things like, at what age does one first get their vote? If someone has more than 2 children, potentially increasing global population over time, how do we address this? Would everyone's footprint always be reduced equally? Or perhaps once we establish new cultures within the system, we would declare that each culture only gets access to a fixed footprint, so that a culture that reduces its population can gain larger individual footprints, whilst cultures that increase their population would have their individual footprints reduced. There are many different solutions to problems like this. However, since each one has pros and cons, and since the weight of each pro and con depends on individual moral philosophies, it is very doubtful that we will all agree on any particular one. Indeed, it is likely that even at this fundamental consensus of how we regulate our vote, humanity may well split up the world along ideological guidelines that have separate cultures that barely interact. This, in our opinion, unfortunate possibility is, however, still achievable within the overall framework of Gaia United. This is why we had to begin our explanation by emphasizing that what it will look like and what the fine details are truly only possible to establish once we all begin to create it together. However, despite this incredible flexibility, if the core principles hold, then no matter what it looks like and how it changes, Gaia United would always ensure a healthy biosphere and a world where everyone's voices hold equal weight. To make this whole idea possible, we will need a few things in terms of technology and changes in human consciousness. In terms of technology, we will need everyone on Earth to have some form of online smartphone or similar device. A ballpark estimate of providing one to every human being for free is $1 trillion US, which is, this is a little bit dated now, but this is less than the most recent fruitless destruction of Iraq by the United States government about a decade ago. So we will also need, just to put that in perspective, so if we can waste that much money on just hurting people and blowing things up and not really making any good profit out of it, we could probably afford to spend that money towards creating a plan for the survival of our species, right? Although obviously for me as an individual, $1 trillion is a bit out of my reach. I will need help, and we'll all need a lot of help. So we're also going to need a server farm that could handle the demands of a 3D modeling system based on the continually changing inputs of over 7 billion members and the Earth's available resources. We also need a team of programmers, designers, developers, engineers, and other experts to make the software work. On top of that, we need translators. By making the software work, I'm talking about every human technology needs to be cataloged and inputted, so that if you say, I want to build a house, it can show you how to build it with different materials, what styles to build it, whether this style is better for insulation or better for ease of maintenance, or whatever it be. So building that database is going to be a huge project. Right, on top of that, we're going to need translators to be able to make the system user-friendly for over 6,900 different languages that humans speak today. And these requirements may seem like a lot to ask for, but they're certainly not impossible if we work together. Now, in terms of human consciousness, we need everyone to respect each other, consider each other equals, and care to look after our biosphere. Also, care to protect the wilderness, and agree to share the planet's resources equally and responsibly. For many of you, you may take these things for granted because they are so natural that it's hard to believe that anyone might not share these views. However, the fact that our current global socio-economic paradigm places profit as the absolute most important thing in the world and literally encourages corporations to behave like sociopaths in pursuit of greed, all the whilst applying a morality of meritocracy to justify the ensuing gross inequality and environmental degradation, with disbelief suspended by the unchallenged premise that everyone has equal opportunity within the system, and thus everyone deserves their lot in life. That might serve as an indicator that at the present date, not all of humanity wants the world to be fair. Things are definitely changing in the right direction, though, as can be seen with the end of state-condoned slavery, the ongoing fight against racism, the recognition of women as equal to men, the the ongoing efforts to heal the harmful and habitual ways many men still mistreat women, the ongoing efforts to acknowledge lesbian, gay, queer, transgender, and other non-binary gender or sexual identifications as normal, and the yet insufficient but sincere efforts of various governments to make reparations with the peoples that they had systematically abused in the past, are all examples of humanity beginning to overcome its prejudices. More recently, we have even seen through the Occupy movement that people all around the world are frustrated by our global system of wage slavery and plutocracy. Thus, though we are certainly not yet united in a dream of a healthy and happy future for everyone, the momentum is undeniably building, which gives us faith that the coming change is inevitable. For now, the most important factor in our chance of success is your own answer to this relatively simple question. Do you want to live in a world that is healthy, sustainable, equitable, free, and diverse? The next most important factor is whether or not you choose to share this idea with everyone you know, and perhaps with even a few people you have yet to meet. If we have been successful in our purpose with this essay, and this video, and this document, then we're happy to welcome you into our collective dream and look forward to working with you to make it real. Thank you sincerely and very much for hearing our thoughts and considering them. What you have just done has helped us achieve our dreams, and we cannot thank you enough for that. Good luck in all of your adventures. Perhaps we'll meet on the path to our dreams.